How do you keep your scrap fabric under control? They are produced with every project and can easily overwhelm your sewing space. The secret to controlling scraps is to have a process to deal with them and get them into your projects and off to a good home. And by popular demand, I am showing you my process for dealing with scraps. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. Having a process and a purpose for your scraps is key for keeping them under control. It's not about eliminating your mountain scrap more, it's about stopping it from growing. When you are deciding upon a system to use, the important point is to keep it simple, because consistency is crucial, and if it's too complicated, you just won't do it. And design it for you and what and how you like to quilt. Today, I am showing you my system so that you can see how scraps flow through my sewing room, into quilts, and out the door. There are 3 major points in quilt making when you need to consider your scraps. When my top is complete, this is the first point that I start dealing with the remains. While making the top, I collect all my scraps into one bag or bucket. I keep them all in one place just in case I need to repair a block or make an extra one. But now the top is done, it's time to sort the leftovers. I make a pile of my yardage, then my fat quarters, pieces of fat quarters, strips, and a pile of crumbs. I tidy everything up, sorting by size. Then I tidy up the edges. To make it all easier, I'm giving some of them a press too. And when I see what I have, I do the following. I find it easier to make the label now from my scraps than wait to the end after binding. I make it from scraps, and with this one, I am taking a motif from my scraps and raw edge appliquing them to another fairly large leftover piece. I use my machine lettering to add a message, the date, and my name. Honestly, it is a huge relief to have it done and out of the way. If you want to learn more about quilt labels, that is how to make one, what it needs to say, and how to attach them, check out this video. Next, I check out the size of my quilt. Am I happy with the width and the height, or does it need a border? And to be honest, I want this quilt a little bit taller, but I really don't want to make any extra blocks. I cannot believe how much mental energy this decision took. I must have thought about it for over a week before I could move forward. But finally, I decided on just a simple, easy border, so I'm adding 8 inches to the top, and I pull the fabric from my leftovers to make it happen. Next, I decide what I'm doing for binding, and I audition various colors and sizes from my leftovers until I decide upon this one. Then I cut my strips and make my binding. Sometimes I use a totally different fabric from my stash, but it's at this point that I make that choice. And only after I've completed these 3 steps do I consider the next step. Now, it's rare that I don't need some augmentation of my backing fabric. And I look to my scrap pile to make it happen. I first look for leftover blocks or partially made ones, or strips and pieces that can easily be made into blocks. Now, I covered this step thoroughly in my video, How to Make an After Quilt. And if you'd like to see how I went about making one for my 100 Days 100 Blocks quilt, let me know down in the comments. Since I no longer need any more of this fabric for any part of this quilt, I am free to deal with everything that remains. First, I fold my yardage. I check that I have both selvages, and I normally only keep pieces larger than 12 inches. I clean up any jagged edges or pieces that I've cut out, and then I fold them so that they all stack nicely. Any fat quarters that are unused, or I might make from some bigger scraps, go back too. But honestly, if I have used the fabric in this quilt, I am done with it. I want to move on and use something different in the next quilt. So I really try to avoid restashing anything. From this smaller pile, I now divide it into prints and solids. In printed fabric, I collect 10-inch squares, 5-inch strips and squares, and 2.5-inch strips and squares. So depending on the size of the scrap and my mood, that's what I cut. I don't sort by color or value, as I try to keep it simple.
At a later date, but not today, I will subdivide these strips into smaller pieces to make bonus blocks.
I do have various blocks that I like to choose from, and I explained everything in my video on bonus blocks. Now, I do make a lot of baby quilts that I donate to a local hospital. So I'm always looking to see if I have enough leftovers to make a 36 by 36 inch quilt, which is 36 6-inch blocks, or 9 12-inch blocks, or 18 6 by 12-inch blocks. And I strategically cut my fabric if I can make one. Now, I often find irregular pieces, and these can stop me dead because of the questions that they pose. What do I do with them? Do I cut them into strips and have all this wastage? What are the maximum pieces I can cut from these? Should I fussy cut this beautiful motif? The Quilting Marine has a saying, it's only fabric. So I just give myself a shake and get on with it. Irregular shapes can be great for paper piecing. And currently, I am saving pieces to make this free paper piece block by Quiet Play. I have made templates for the required pieces so I can quickly see if I have enough fabric. I also cut hexagons from the irregular shapes for my 3/4 inch English paper piecing hexagon project. Viewers often ask me what I'm going to do with them all, but honestly, I just don't know yet. I just keep making them and adding them to the jar. For strips that are narrower than 2.5 inches, I toss them in this tray. I use them to make scrappy braids and scrappy strip blocks, but I don't bother trimming them or removing the threads until I use them. And the pieces that are shorter than 4 inches, I add them to my CRUMB basket. These I sew onto adding machine tape to make my CRUMB strips. This is a very popular idea, and I've explained everything in this video here. I have over 100 strips now, and that's enough to finish that project. And when I get back from Holland, it's next on the list. Now, I process my solids differently. I don't know why, other than that's how my brain works. If I can, I cut 2.5 inch jelly roll strips so that I can pair them with my printed jelly roll strips to make my fast and easy jelly roll block number 4 or my jelly roll block number 5. All the remaining pieces I sort by color, and I place them here in the bottom of this drawer and organize them by the 6 major colors and another stack for white and black. And I use them as I need them, and sometimes I take them out and play with some improv exercises. Now, I do have a lower limit on size for my scraps, and I pass on anything under 1 inch. So now my quilt top has been quilted, and as I trim and square up my quilt, I get a whole new pile of scraps. Actually, I like to have these selvage to selvage pieces of fabric. I will trim them to 2.5 inch and pre-make binding strips from them. I store them in this bucket, and I can't tell you how many times having the binding ready to go has made my life easier. Anything narrower, I add to my strip tray or my CRUMB basket. Batting scraps are a whole other level of scrap busting. I try not to cut my batting too much larger than my top. I also try to keep it aligned with my top left corner, leaving just a few inches on the side and the top. But there's often a big piece at the bottom.
So I'll trim this off and keep these larger pieces in a stack.
and I will splice them together as necessary to make one large piece to use on another quilt. This is often called Franken Batting, which I show you how to make in this video here. If the piece is smaller, I will cut 20-inch pieces for pillows, 12-inch pieces for quilt-as-you-go blocks, and 4x6 for postcards. So it depends on the size of the batting for what I actually cut. All these little extra pieces, no matter how small, I cut into little bits that I use for stuffing. And this might look like a lot, but an 18-inch pillow takes over 2 bags. Now, I have not mentioned it before, but cutting up scraps is messy work. There are tons of threads and fluff, and batting just takes it to another level, making a fuzzy disaster zone of your cutting mat. So remember to keep your foam square nearby and clean up as you go. Now, it's very rare that one doesn't have leftover binding. Binding chicken is not a game you want to lose.
So these are the last scraps produced in this project.
If they are 2.5-inch strips, that's just a no-brainer. I cut them into pieces and add them to my bonus block pile. Occasionally, I do the math wrong and I have a full strip left over. If I do, I add them to my jelly roll strip pile to use in my 12-inch blocks. And I'm done. Now, this process has actually happened over several days. I find it's best to use my timer and process them in batches because there is a lot of decision making and your brain gets tired. When I find that I'm staring at a piece of fabric and I'm stumped, unsure whether to cut a 2.5-inch square or a hexagon, I put down my rotary cutter and do something else. I hope you've seen some ideas that you can take into your sewing room and adapt for how you like to quilt. If you'd like to see the bonus block video, I'll put a link to that playlist here. If you want to see other ways to use up your scraps, I'll link to that playlist as well. Take care, and I'll see you next time.